All right, and we're back with the program. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. I had to get this guy back on the air. He was a great time speaking to him and actually doing a panel with him at Indie Pods United. And in fact, if you want a great laugh and some great interviews, you got to check out jeffisfunny.com, because the Jeff Dwoskin show will get in your ears and will entertain you nonstop. It is the comedian himself that is just, I tell you what, he's a laugh. He's just an awesome guy, and he's altogether got a great show. It is Jeff Dwoskin. And Jeff, I cannot thank you enough for being part of the program here today.
It's so good to be here. Thank you.
I know
it was a blast doing all those shows with you.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, your experience with Indie Pods United, I know Tina Marie did, and Robert and Jeff and Cammie and the whole 9 yards. They did a great job. Sean, everybody else that was involved, Nigel. I mean, the list goes on and on. They worked so hard to create this Indie Pods United, and I cannot thank them enough for being part of it. But just the whole thing is about being part of a podcast convention. Did you ever think in 2020, because your show is more of a recent podcast entry, did you ever think that in 2020 you would be part of a podcast convention?
No, it was exciting. It was fun to be a part of, especially, on the ground floor. And I got to give Tina, Marie, and all of the crew, such huge kudos. I mean, if anyone looked in on that summit and just kind of looked at it, I mean, from the art to the programming to how well it ran, and then someone said, "Oh, by the way, that was their first one." I mean, that could have easily been the 5th annual. I mean, it was like, I mean that in the highest regard. I mean, the quality of it was just insane. In my opinion, in terms of, and I've been to a lot of, not podcasts, but a lot of digital marketing, whatever, conventions, and most of them are snooze fests and hard to even make through. And so this was just, it was great. It was just so much content. You got to know so many people. And the whole indie concept is amazing because, let's face it, like, I get my emails from Apple or Spotify, and it's like, you know what? Joe Rogan doesn't need your help in this email. I do. Or like other people like me do. Discover the new, gems, these famous people, they can handle it themselves.
Well, once again, I am speaking to Jeff Dwoskin. He is the man behind one of the top 25 independent podcasts for 2020 that was voted on at Indie Pods United, and that is the Jeff Dwoskin Show. Please check out jeffisfunny.com or the Jeff Dwoskin Show wherever you get your podcasts. But Jeff, I mean, the experience in and of itself is funny because you're going from room to room to room to Zoom. And then it came to the point where Tina Marie, oh, there's Jeff again. Oh, there's Jeff again. Oh, there's Jeff again. It's so awesome to have you such a great part of the whole Indie Pods United concept. I know that was a lot of fun for you as well.
I had a blast. It was fun. Look, if you can't share your experiences and help other people, no matter what time frame you've been doing everything in, what's the point? It's amazing to be a part of a community and to be able to, meet great people, work together, learn a thing or two, it's all great,
Well, what got you into podcasting after all? I mean, obviously as a guy who is up on the stage so much, I mean, 2020 has made a hard right, so to speak, speak as far as that's concerned. But I know, what were the motivations for you getting into podcasting in the first place?
Well, one of my motivations for getting into audio podcasting was my ears do not look nearly as big in audio as they do in video.
There you go, right there.
You've got ears for audio, son. And so, I originally wanted to do one in 2017. I bought all my equipment, thankfully, because once the pandemic hit, it was almost impossible to buy podcasting equipment. But I had bought it all in like 2017. And I know that because that's when my wife started yelling at me about having so many cords on my desk. And so it just sat there though. But the whole concept of my show was different. And it was actually originally going to be social media minded because a large part of my background in social media, I've been a social media person for a $1 billion company. So I that's my thing. And I spent a lot of time on Twitter. And so my podcast was going to be called Viral Intentions. I had bought all the equipment and I had a professional intro and outro. It was going to be social, social media focused, Viral Intentions, kind of like the movie Cruel Intentions, a little spin on that. And also, going viral, you go viral. But then flash forward when all of a sudden we're all stuck at home, we all got this time and it's March 2020. And I finally have time to kind of do everything. Starting a podcast in the midst of a pandemic where people are starting to die called Viral Intentions, suddenly I found myself ready to go and I needed an entirely new concept and name. So I scrapped the original idea. I mean, I had art, I had everything.
Smart
for
move.
it. I mean, I had a logo, artwork, everything. And so I scrapped it and decided just to call it the Jeff Dwoskin Show and then kind of focus a little more of it. So I consider it more of like a humorous pop culture, comedy, social trends, kind of hits on all the different legs of my interests. And I think that's what probably got me to actually do it. I think the social media focused version, I'm sure would have been fine, but it wasn't, I think, what was going to drive me in my passion. And so that's why I kind of sat dormant. I didn't know that, but I thought I was just being lazy. But then once I had the time, plus the Jeff Dwoskin Show, I wanted people to know it was my show and not for like an ego reason, but like you post something on Facebook and you're like, and then people are like, oh, he's doing that for someone else. I don't have to listen. You know what I mean? And so I was like, well, if it has my name on it, then they'll know it's my thing. It's my show. And so, that has some downsides to it because, then somebody has to know who I am. So I have to spend time, being on 500, get my name out there type thing. But now I'm doing a live show. You guys all inspired me. So I started a live show last week. So I do that every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And so that was so fun. And the second one we're doing soon. And it's great. It's just fun. I'm just addicted to it now. So,
that's
building it up.
That's great. That's awesome because the hard work that I know you put into it, you can tell if you go ahead and check out the Jeff Dwoskin Show, all the great episodes, the interviews. I mean, you've already had some fascinating interviews, very funny, very candid interviews. A lot of them they go off the rails in more than one way, but usually in a very good way. I mean, all the guests there seem to have a great time. And that's something that comes across. And you mentioned the type of show that you envisioned before and the type of show you have now is much better for you because these are things you'd like to talk about. I think that comes across most on your show is because of the fact that you enjoy what you're talking about even more than, let's say, if you were just going through the motions on a social media centric podcast.
Yes. You call it off the rails. I call it original content. It's like I had Jackie the Joke Man Martling on. And so the intention was, here's the guy from Howard Stern, the original crew from Howard Stern. And so we started talking and it went down a whole different path. And we had sort of agreed on a time frame that he had. And so by the end of it, we were just getting to him being on the Howard Stern show. And I had him back and I recorded it. I just haven't put it out yet, but I have a part 2 of that one where we talk about the Howard Stern show and all that kind of good stuff. But it was like, he started talking and he went to Michigan State University, which is where my daughter goes. And so we started telling stories about that. And then he mentioned he got arrested. And then, just on a whim, I just go, oh, arrested? And he had like 8 stories. I'm like, yeah, just go. You know what I mean? It's like, it's hard when you're interviewing people that have heard people talk before and you want to, in one hand, you want some of the stock stories because you want it part of your history. Right. Yeah. But then you also want something that they're only going to hear at that, on your show, if you can, right. And so, that's why, you prepare a lot, but then I kind of hope that it just goes wherever it goes. So
no, it's great because if that's the case, because that, as you say, is podcasting gold. Is when you have someone that's, like you said, the stock questions and answers, but then it goes into a different format that they're not going to talk about it on any other show, but they talked about it on your show. And once they open up, it really helps for to not only enliven the conversation, but it helps as a listener to go ahead and enjoy it even more, because they know they're getting something out of it that they wouldn't get from listening to that individual on any other show. And we all know that a lot of these individuals that you're talking to are appearing on other places, but they need to check out your show, because they opened up even more and even better on your format and your show when you had them go ahead and break out those stories and things of that nature that they didn't share on, let's say, my show or any other show as well.
Right. And thank you for that. I appreciate that. The one thing I'll say, one of my favorite moments on the show that nobody would know. So if you go listen to the Hal Sparks interview, which is like a couple weeks ago, I didn't tell him he was in Dude, Where's My Car? Right. So that was one of his big things. He was Zoltan. And so that was one of his big roles that he's known for. And so when I started the interview, I actually introduced him as Zoltan. Okay. Like the intro was that. I didn't say Hal Sparks. I just went, hey, ladies and gentlemen, crazy times. And here's the leader of this. And I just said Zoltan. And if you listen to the podcast, he goes right into character. And I realized, like, after, like, someone was like, oh, he knew he was going to do that. I didn't tell him I was going to do it. And so he just went right into character. And I'm like, it's great, but it also just shows how, like, amazing Hal Sparks is. Like, he just went right into the Zoltan character and did a quick monologue on it, before I brought it back and kind of said, it's Hal Sparks. It was just, to me, that's like one of my, I tell people after the fact, after they listen, because they're like, oh, I assumed you set that up. I'm like, no. Like with Hal, I was like, what do you want to talk about? He's like, well, it won't be organic if we talk about what we're going to talk about.
That's what makes your show so awesome to listen to, is where these conversations go for you. I really truly have enjoyed my time listening to it. I wanted to ask you this. I mean, because you said you're fairly new to the podcasting realm, of the podcasting world, but this is something obviously you've been able to excel at real quickly, which is advantageous for you, as opposed to, say, a lot of other people who are still struggling with it months and months in. But you're using this as something that you're, I guess, I don't know, as far as a diversion, but this is obviously something that you're going to be delving into more in coming years because of what's going on with the pandemic. And I know it's slowed down your schedule as regards to, your stand-up, your obviously performances that you would have had normally scheduled. I mean, are you trying to go ahead and say, this is something that I want to do going forward, and integrate that with obviously the schedule that you want to go ahead and have once everything is a lot better for us when it comes to 2020? I mean, is this something that you want to go ahead and integrate going forward as a part of your persona, as a part of who you want people to know you by, is not only check me out live, but check me out on the show as well?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, if you meet any stand-up comic, no one quits comedy. You just don't. But with the COVID, everyone had to stop. I mean, and I think for us as interviewers, it was helpful because they're home. They didn't have anything else to do. So that was good to take advantage of. But, I don't necessarily see myself. The benefit of doing comedy for me was meeting the people that I've met, and I've been able to reach out to them. Even 15, 20 years. And so, hey, you want to be on my podcast? And so, if I'm able to meet new people when I'm doing it, great. If it's just me doing comedy in a club, then I don't know that this isn't better for me than that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I don't have to travel anywhere. I don't have to. It's weird. Like, I used to always, before a show, always get this anxiety before going on stage. I was like, oh, do I have enough material? I mean, ridiculous. Like, I could have just done an hour and I'm supposed to do 15 minutes. And I'd be like, what happens if I can't fill 15 minutes? Ridiculous, anxiety. And and now I've just transferred it to, oh my God, I got an interview at 6. What if it just doesn't go the way I need it to go? It's yep. So I see this now, especially now that I'm doing the live show, and I've started doing the live show to help drive the podcast. I think there's like two different things. And, the live show got more views than my podcast. so if I'm being quite honest. So it's interesting though to see then what you can drive, but also like I hadn't really thought about monetary in a while, but if all of a sudden you're getting thousands, you can offer thousands a week, then it starts to become something that you can do, more specifically and see what can come from it. The whole idea of it is fascinating to me. I've just kind of playing with it, and I've been learning. I did my first live show last week. I forgot to hit the live button. If you watch the beginning of it, I'm like, okay, I think I got it now. I think we're live. Literally thought we were 30 seconds into the show and I didn't know that it didn't just automatically go live. So it's like, you live and learn. So, it's funny because like the podcast, in terms of production and me, if like when I do an interview, I have the 5 or so minutes before and a few minutes after, and that's me. I make that as part of that episode. And the interviews. So if you listen to my podcast from the beginning forward, you can hear a progression, I hope, of it getting better as I learn new tricks and stuff like that. But if you listen to the interviews, that's not necessarily a progression of me getting better at being an interviewer, because I may have like Hal Sparks, I got out right away. Yeah. And then the one yesterday I did 2 months ago. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just interesting to me, but it's fun. It's still fun. And it's like, it's an obsession. It's just a different thing. To me, it's like, it's interesting because when you go on stage, you're in front of a live audience. So there's 2 things that has to happen. One, even though you're doing material that you've done a million times, you still have to do it right. Yeah. You have to be in the right mindset. You have to deliver it correctly. You have to do all these things. And then there's the outside factor of the audience. And, maybe something was just in the news and they're all in a bad mood, or they're tired, it's late, or they're just not jiving with you that show, and the next show they do, so there's all these different dynamics. But with the podcast, what I find fascinating is you put it together and you say, this is the most perfect version I can do of this at this moment. And you put that out there, and then it's out there. You don't get the feedback unless, people reply to it and tell you things. But, it's a little different mindset to be able to deliver something and not hear something. Even with the live version, which to me then adds in a little bit of being on stage, but you still don't necessarily you're not hearing anybody back. And so it's a different type of thing, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Well, I'm glad you are, my friend. And as someone who actually worked on comedy shows here in Las Vegas for a little while, it was always interesting to see not when the lights were on, but when the lights were off, and how the comedians would actually interact with not only themselves, because that's always fun, because it's always got to a situation where they were trying to one-up each other all the time, especially when they hit the bar. And then also after that, you talk about interaction with the general people at large, because you don't know when a comedian is actually turning it off and becoming the actual person, or if they're going to be 24/7, the comedian, have to be on all day. So it's interesting to see the dynamic as far as which individuals, when they stepped off the stage, were actually different, or were they the same? So it was kind of always interesting, that dynamic, when I was, like I said, working on comedy shows here in Las Vegas. But I will always remember that. And when I listen to your show, I get a lot of that. I get people that not only, they turn it on, and the comedians that you talk to have that on, and then the ones that are actually going to go ahead and they're speaking to you as a peer, and they go ahead and they break down and become more themselves, that are off the stage as well. So I get that dynamic of the two. So it's always great to hear. But before we head on out, my friend, I want to go ahead and have you hit the hard pitch. I want you to go ahead and give the big sell on why people need to check out the Jeff Dwoskin Show, outside of bribing people, of course.
Well, I think you did already such a great job. I mean, if I was listening to you, I'd be like, I got to check this guy out. So thank you for all the kind words. But, it's a passion project. I'm obsessed with being on stage and delivering something that I think people would want to hear. And so that's the heart and soul that I put into the podcast. And it's fun. I'm talking to people that I enjoy talking to. And my kind of secret or feeling or hope is that the things that are of interest to me and the things that I can get out are of interest to other people as well. And that's, so I'm coming at it from that mindset, not as I'm a fan, but not a, like, not, not like where I take it to the next point. So we can have a real conversation, but talk to comedians, actors, social media people. There's always something. Every show the structure is the same, but it's a little different in terms of just, what you get out of it and the type of information and the type of enjoyment. But hopefully you're always laughing, always having fun, and always thoroughly enjoyed through it. That's the one kind of thread that I'm hoping the Jeff Dwoskin show brings to you and your loved ones this holiday season.
Oh my gosh, that sounded very nice. That was very smooth right there for you. I love how you transitioned into that nice close right there for you. It is the Jeff Dwoskin show. You got to go ahead and check out what he's doing. JeffIsFunny.com, plus also the Jeff Dwoskin show, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, when he gets back out on the stage and tour, please go ahead and check him out at your local comedy club. Hopefully you'll get a chance to, because he is definitely worth your time indeed. It is the Jeff Dwoskin show. Please check it out today. And Jeff, I cannot tell you enough. Thank you for stopping by. I know I got you on real quick, sort of unexpected, so I do apologize for that. But I want to go ahead and be the first to wish you and your family a happy and safe holiday season, my friend.
Thank you. And happy holidays and New Year's to you too. Yeah, only the best for you. I got the good orange sweatshirt on.
There you go. See, I'm honored. I got the Baby Yoda hat on. I'm rocking it best I can.
Grogu.
No, Baby Yoda. I'm sorry. That train left the station the first week after the first episode. I know Jon Favreau will say the child. I know he'll say Grogu, but I'm sorry that in fact, my daughter, who's really into the Mandalorian, she'll say Grogu. Baby Yoda for me all the way. I can't.
There's nothing cuter than when he says Grogu and Baby Yoda goes. It's just nothing cuter.
Oh my gosh. I hear that in the house all day long because my daughter has one of those squeezable toys as far as just all the day long. But I enjoy the Mandalorian just like everybody else. But again, you need to check out the Jeff Dwoskin show. I think you'll be glad you did. I think you will be very glad you did, because it's a lot of funny conversations. And I'll tell you what, Jeff, it's been great to have you on the show. Cannot thank you enough for being part of the program today, and of course, part of the Pop Culture Cosmos.